Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Holly Tate, SVP of Growth here at Leadr, and I am so excited to be able to talk to Chris Lonegro, who is the founder of Generation Development. Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Happy to do it.
We were just talking about how you now have had your business for 14 years, right?
14 years. Yeah, I'll actually be coming up here in February. So, yeah.
Which congratulations, because that is huge. It is a huge accomplishment, and you guys are in a big growth season, which I can't wait to unpack together today. But first, tell us a little bit about you and what you do there at Generation.
Yeah, so we are an infill multifamily, developer here in Denver, Colorado. We tend to find, underutilized locations, lots in the city where, we can build kind of 30 to 50 unit condominium buildings. And so we are a design build group now. So we have design in-house, we have the general contracting in-house, and then, all the development aspect.
I would love to start, Chris. I love talking with you because your care for your team and the way that you think about developing people is just so in line with the way that we think about it here at Leadr. So talk to me a little bit about like your journey in that. So when you founded Generation to now, 14 years later, what kind of just sum up your overall leadership development philosophy to build your team?
Yeah, so I was in the construction development side of the world and worked for corporate offices kind of for the first part of my career before kind of going off on my own. And I think the first couple of years of the business, kind of like most entrepreneurs and stuff, right? You have this vision and this idea of what owning a business is, and it's very funny how I think the reality of it and the challenges are different as you get into it. And so I think I found myself maybe 3 or 4 years in. Like, I remember my wife saying, she's like, "Are you sure you don't want to go work for somebody else? Like, you don't seem like you're real happy." And I was like, I don't. What are you talking about, right? And so I started to really look for some other answers out there. And so we started working with a growth coach who did a ton of personality profiling and a lot of those things. And I found that was really the key for me to change my mindset on where did I really need to be in the business, and what were the things that really got me super excited, right? And why did I really start this? I think that's a lot of small business owners. They go down that path and then they lost the thing that was like, let's go do this.
Yeah.
And I was also okay, what are also the things that really drag me down, and why, right? What is it about that? And so we do a ton of work with our team on really identifying that stuff. And I think, to me, that's really what our catalyst is we don't have a lot of turnover, and people generally want to stay here. And even the people that leave, it's a journey thing for them of we work with them and they actually make a realization that says, this isn't for me. And to me, that's my biggest, that's my, my big why, if you will, is me motivating or kind of shining the light on for someone to say, hey, this is really what I want to do. This is the why behind it. So
it's not about keeping them, it's about helping them achieve their best self. And so that's a great perspective.
Well, and I think my understanding is, you bring, every day to work, right? We live our lives, and you bring that dream that you have with you every single day, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather understand what that dream really is, and let's talk about it. Let's be, and if it's not here, let's say, okay, cool. How do we get you to the place that you really want to be, right? Because eventually it happens, right? Or you become, you can become so fed up or dissatisfied, right? That then you don't perform, and then we wonder, oh, well, why is this person not performing? And it's like, well, they really don't want to do this. They want to go be a ballet dancer or whatever the thing is, right? And so to me, again, I think that, and that's the same piece of that personal stuff and that professional. And people are like, oh no, this is my professional life, and I have to do this. I'm like, if your pet passed away, I want to know, because I want to know how does that affect you today. That's a real life thing, right?
Yeah, it's so integrated.
We can just pretend to ignore it, but I don't think that's real life, right? Just as the same is if you're bringing your work life home with you, that affects you there. And so we need to talk about that and understand that, right? So it's that two-way street.
So true. It's so integrated. Absolutely. Well, you've been on what I call the leaderboard, our customers, for a little over a year now, I believe, which is just wild. And so I would love to think back about a year when you and I first had a conversation. What were the leadership challenges or the growth challenges that you were facing at the time that caused you to reach out to Leadr? What were you facing that you were kind of trying to figure out?
We did a lot of, Enneagram testing and a lot of our personality profiling, but we didn't have a great way to have our one-to-one meetings and kind of track them and make notes. We didn't have a great way to do our performance reviews, and when you're a small company, it feels like you almost do a performance review every month or every week, right? You go to lunch, It's 3 people, you have a really good pulse, right?
Yes.
And what we found is as I was growing, I really needed a tool that allowed us to kind of track it, allowed us to really, focus kind of the agenda for some of those meetings. I think so. That was really the big thing that I was searching for. Is like, how do we take this to the next step? We looked at a bunch of different groups, and I think the things for us about Leadr that was the best was I think it really integrated what was so important to us on that personality profile side, right? And really integrating those parts and pieces. And it wasn't just your typical kind of, hey, let's do one-to-one check-ins, but it really, to me, it helped us really integrate the whole person, and how do they really show up.
Yeah, like with the care card, that's my favorite part of our tool. Is that for me as the more operational driven leader, I like to jump in and get all the tasks done. And so the care card forces me to pump the brakes and go, wait a second, Chris is a whole person. How can I make sure I'm really caring for him? And I'd love for you to share that. I know you've shared with me before, you've had a couple of different leaders that love to, jump in and talk about projects, and you're constantly coaching them to like, slow down. That's a different meeting. This is an intentional one-on-one. So how are you coaching your team around really what those one-on-ones look like, and how, new managers can really help become a better leader for the first time?
Again, that one-to-one for us is really important to check in on how you're doing. And it's just funny because as I bring on new managers and as we grow, everybody wants to do it's always very, I'm like, how are the one-ones going with your, downline? Oh, they're good. We talk about all the projects, and I'm like, okay, time out. Like you need to have that meeting, right? But that needs to be separate, right? That needs to be a more project meeting, and you need to be talking about how are they showed up? What are their goals? What do they really want to be doing here, right? Is this in line? Like, so they're brand new to the team. Great. Is this what they thought it was going to be? Right. And it's just funny because a lot of people find those questions, I think, a little uncomfortable sometimes. But again, those are real things, and people have, they're thinking them, and sometimes they just don't have, they don't feel the space, or they don't have maybe the courage to bring them to the table. Right.
Yeah.
And to us, that's why it's such an important piece is to go back to it. And it doesn't always happen at first, right? I think you get some people that are more willing to share, and then you get others that it takes. You got to ask that question maybe 3 or 4 times over a couple of months before they feel there's a safe space to really share it. So
yeah, you nailed it, Chris. I mean, all the data tells us that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And so if we're not intentional in creating that space to really ask how are you and how are you showing up, then that our relationship with our manager, we can't possibly build that relationship because it's all around trust. And so even though it might be uncomfortable to encourage new managers, or even those of us that aren't new, but still need the reminder to really make sure that we're intentionally, reaching out our hand and building trust across the table or across the Zoom screen is so valuable, and that'll only increase over time. Okay, so a year later, how would you describe your team as you've been really coaching on intentional one-on-ones and using Leadr to do that? How would you describe your team now a year later compared to what it was last year?
Yeah, it's kind of become a tool that's integrated into our workflow just as much as Gmail or our online drive system. It's one of the tools that we use. And to me, again, I think it's almost more important for some of our newer managers or new staff members. I think that's kind of like, with the routine and the people that have been here a while and use it, it's great and it's working and all those great things. But it's really when you bring on that new person that's never been at a company that does any of this work, I think they get really excited about it. Like, wow, this is really interesting. No one's ever asked me that question before, so.
Yes, they feel seen and known and cared for in a new way. That's awesome. Well, what would you tell an executive leader out there that's looking at Leadr and is thinking about it for the first time? What would you share with them?
my experience with kind of anyone at Leadr in the company has always been great. And if there's anything I need or I didn't understand, there's great support there. So I think that's always, that's nice to have, right? You always hear the sales pitch and then it kind of falls off after that. And I would say, with Leadr, it's been consistent, and we really appreciate that. I think you guys have a commitment to, continuously improving the product too. So that's always a great thing. I think, just in terms of using it, to me, again, I just know that that's been the game changer for us as a company and our culture, is again, you're bringing kind of what's in that maybe subconscious of what does that person really want, and how are they really driven, and all of those things, and bringing it to the forefront and really checking in on them. I think, you hear companies that talk about we care about our employees and we're a family and all of those things. And those all sound nice, but like, well, do you? Because we do an annual review and half the things are a surprise to me, or, all those things. Right. And so for me, I think it really, it allows us to kind of walk the walk and say, hey, no, this is really important to us, and here's how we actually really do it. And again, it's a great tool. It helps us check in faster, I think, with the employees on a positive, and maybe some that need some more coaching, right? And I think that's really what's been great for us, is helping us identify that sooner. Is like, okay, hey, so and so, we've talked about this. Still seems like you're struggling. What's going on, right? Like, do you not get it? Do you not love it? Do you what really is the thing? And as opposed to like, quarterly review or an annual review or whatever, and hey, I'm going to give you some feedback now. It's like, wow, gosh, how much time have we both wasted in for each other?
So true. So it sounds like Leadr really helps you live out those values that you say, but you have such a desire to really show by helping you walk the talk every day, day in and day out.
Yeah, I think, and to me, again, I think it also sets us apart as a company, right? As we know, it's a challenging place for to keep employees, and then the cost of turnover is huge, right? And so for us, it's about, this is a culture, this is really what we believe, and this is how we show that we care. And again, I think it's one of those things that says, if you aren't in alignment with one of those values, or you don't think we're doing it, let's talk about it. That's the culture we want. Because you have just as much opportunity to help us change that and fix that in our company than anybody else. It doesn't have to come just from the top down.
Yes, empowering every employee to really own that culture and make it better. So good. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today, and we are just cheering you on here at Leadr as you grow your team. And really, what's really cool about what you guys get to do is not only are you growing your team, but you're growing the Denver area by projects that you're able to do, which is really exciting. And we love to be a part of that. So thanks so much for being a part of the Leaderboard.
Absolutely. Thank you.